All right, Adrian, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, as I understand it, you recently spent the night at the warming center. You interviewed some folks there about their circumstances. So, I just wanted to know kind of how was your experience there, spending the night at the warming center?
It was eye-opening. It was something that I feel is important to do. There are people in our community of all kinds that were staying there, and I wanted to go and see who was there and what their stories were. And the director of the warming shelter reached out to me, Tanya, and I was very happy to accept her invitation.
When you were preparing to go spend the night there, what were some of the things that she kind of braced you for?
She wanted me to know about the policies that they have, the timing, the scheduling, what they offer, and she did warn me to bring a change of clothing, because they have had some issues with bed bugs in their bedding.
Yeah, and you found that to be true, correct? You left with some bites.
Yeah, over the couple weeks after that, I did find a number of bites around my body.
Yeah. So a great resource for the community for people to go to, but there are still some of those things that you spent one night there, but there are people who spend every night there. So I thought that was interesting to mention. So it seemed like among the people that you interviewed, there were people that do really spend every night there when they're able. Did you feel some sort of shared community amongst the people there?
Yes and no. It's an interesting question. People got along quite well. There was no. I only saw, I'd say one. I don't even want to call it an argument. Maybe more of a debate. It wasn't. It was peaceful, and it was along religious and philosophical lines. It wasn't. It didn't turn into anything unruly. I'd say for the most part. I mean, it's everybody's space, and it's none of their space, in a way. So everybody acted as respectful guests, I'd say. People were helping each other out. I did see that. I saw, and there are certainly friendships formed there. I'd say people sort of had some friends and sort of broke off into some groups. Some people kept to themselves. There was I don't know about a community, but there was definitely a culture of empathy and understanding there. People didn't get in each other's way, and it was very respectful. It was a very respectful atmosphere.
Okay. I know it varies from person to person, but just among the people that you talked to, what were some of the circumstances that led to them having to stay in the shelter?
Oh yeah, there was a number of circumstances. The ones that stood out to me, there were a number of women, particularly older women, who were divorced or were out of relationships and lost housing as a result of that. There were younger people who just had maybe had fallen out with their families, and then through a number of circumstances found themselves without a safety net, without the support that many people can count on with their families. And a common circumstance were people who had been renting rooms in people's houses, and then through various reasons were made homeless. Typically, a story I heard multiple times was that a house was sold to a new owner, and the new owner had new plans and didn't wish to rent out a room, and so the arrangement ended, and that could put people out on the street, within a month. There were people whose lives were upended because of just the buying and selling of property that they had no say in.
In January, Flathead County commissioners penned a letter about what they believe to be the cause of rising homelessness in Kalispell. They said local homeless shelters are causing people to migrate to the area, saying that, quote, if we continue to enable the homeless population, then those numbers will increase. Their claims about a progressive network conspiring to bring in more homeless people from elsewhere cannot be substantiated.
Yeah, no, I made sure to ask each of my interviewees about that letter. And I did that because the letter, although it didn't mention the shelter by name, it might as well have. It attributed, the commissioners in the letter attributed a rise in homelessness to the opening of a low barrier overnight shelter. And in the county, the Flathead Warming Center is the only such shelter. So although they didn't use the name, it seemed pretty clear that they were calling out that facility. And in speaking with volunteers and Tanya Horn, the director of the shelter, they felt targeted. They felt singled out by that letter. And in email communications and phone calls with her, she expressed to me that it had also made some of their guests uncomfortable. And so I had the sense before I went in that even if everybody in there hadn't maybe read the letter, there was some understanding of it. There had been discussion of it, and so I wanted to get those people's opinions. And a lot of the opinions basically were along the lines of, that the commissioners should come to the shelter to see what the actual situation was before speaking out about it. People felt that the commissioners rushed to judgment, and also felt that in the letter they had sort of lumped all homeless people into a one category, one that a lot of people did not identify with. The letter mentions things like transiency and sort of lifestyle choice as the reason behind homelessness, and as rationale to not and as reason to not support or donate to the warming center and other homeless nonprofits. So the people I spoke to, who obviously are beneficiaries of that shelter, felt targeted, understandably so, and were worried about what power the commissioners had in taking away permits or shutting down the shelter, or preventing the opening of another shelter if one were to appear. A lot of people are not seeking help, or told me that they were not seeking help. And I got the sense that, like many situations, people adapt. Yeah. And I think people also didn't really, if you don't see a way out, perhaps it's easier to justify and rationalize the situation you're in. I did get the sense that for some people, although homelessness was difficult, they had adapted to it and were finding ways to survive.
Yeah. I'm curious, when you went in to start interviewing these people, as a reporter, what was in your mind? What were some of the things that you wanted to keep in mind when you interviewed these people? Because obviously it's a sensitive issue.
Yeah, I was trying not to play into some of the tropes about homelessness and homeless people, while at the same time not steer. I'm not trying to steer people into one answer or another. So I gave myself to do that. I came in pretty prepared. I wrote a list of questions, and I asked the same questions to everybody, and I tried to stick to that script while allowing for the subjects to share their unfiltered opinions. And sometimes it went a little bit, in one direction or another. But I tried to think of fair questions that would just, I wanted to show the humanity in these people. I wanted to, let people express themselves fully and openly in a way that I don't feel that they're often given the opportunity to. So, like I said, I went in with a list of pretty basic questions, and I tried to let them just speak their minds.
Yeah. One of the people that you spoke to was Vicki Brockish. You asked her if she could share anything about homelessness with people who aren't as familiar with it. What would she say? So we're going to play a clip from her right now.
I think there's a stigma that people think homeless people can't think, they can't reason, and that, they probably just accept the situation. I don't think they accept it. I think it's stressful for them, and I think the ones that are able to do something better for themselves will actually try, but there's some that just can't.
Do you mind explaining quickly how Vicki ended up at the warming center?
Yeah, Vicki told me that she'd been working as a live-in caregiver for elderly and disabled people, and she was such a warm, caring person. I could tell that, she's very good at that job. She said that in her last situation, she found some kind of abuse that she was uncomfortable with, and brought that to someone's attention, and was basically fired, as a result. And the unfortunate situation, and she also shared with me her previous job before that, a similar live-in caregiver situation, and then her patient died, and she lost her job and her housing. And this was a similar situation. Once she was fired, by virtue of the arrangement they had, she not only lost her income, but also her place to stay. So, she was quite vulnerable when her housing and her job were so tightly linked.
Right. Yeah, and it was so great of her to share that with you. So obviously she's there during the night, but during the day, no one's allowed to stay at the warming center. And you heard from some people about where they go during the day. Recently there's been some places that have been closed off to them, like the gazebo at Depot Park in Kalispell. What were some of the thoughts from people about where they go during the day and how they feel when they're out in the community?
Yeah, that seemed to be a major challenge among a number of the people that I interviewed. The fact of the matter is there's not very many places to go in this community during the day if you don't have a job or a place to live, especially in the winter. Many said that they'd go to the library. Others said that they would spend time at a coffee shop or a restaurant if they had the money to pay for something. But a number of the people I interviewed said there was a need for some sort of day center or recreation center. There have been some day centers in the past. I know Sunburst Mental Health operated one, at least until a couple years ago. but had to shut that down. And at this point, there's very, very few places for people to go. Others said that they'd go to the mall, but people I spoke to, a number of them shared with me a concern that they had about being perceived as homeless, and a stigma and a treatment that they receive if they're seen as homeless. People told me that they wouldn't bring backpacks into stores or restaurants or the library because they'd be seen as homeless people, and that they did everything they could to appear otherwise. I was told of people getting kicked out of the deli at the grocery store, even after having purchased items, and that these were now attached to a sort of time limit, similar to the laws that we see passed regarding the gazebo. The gazebo now there's now a law on the books in Kalispell that says that you can't occupy the gazebo for more than 2 or 2.5 hours in a day without a permit. And so we, according to the interviews, we're also seeing that those sorts of policies come into effect at some local businesses.
That's really interesting. Is there anything else that you've heard from people besides like a recreation center during the day that they feel would help them get themselves out of this situation?
I asked about sort of, let's say, anti-homelessness resources, and I didn't get a lot of opinions along those lines. People did seem to think that there was a need for, like I said, a day center. Not that it would necessarily prevent or help someone out of homelessness, but more that it was that the community should have some place for people to go, homeless or not, during the day. Someone I spoke with mentioned that he'd like to see it just for retired people, for elderly people, as a social center, as a place to go. And the other thing that I heard a need for was just increased shelter capacity, because the unfortunate fact is, according to the director of the shelter, they turn away people most nights, and they fill up most nights. And so there's definitely the demand for more overnight shelter beds in this community. And some people I spoke with reiterated that and said that they'd like to see another shelter, of the same size, perhaps on the other side of town, because transportation is very difficult as well. Thankfully, the mountain climber bus service picks people up from the shelter in the morning, and I think brings people back to the warming center when the library closes in the afternoon or evening. But I definitely heard some requests for an additional shelter offering similar services.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of our nonprofits here do offer resources to these people and are helping them on a case-by-case basis. In my experience in reporting on this and talking with different leaders at nonprofits here, they say that a lot of the people are already receiving some kind of assistance, and the reality is it just varies from person to person so wildly. It's really a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, and I heard from plenty of people who said that they didn't need any assistance and they didn't seek out any assistance. And I on multiple occasions, I heard people who are sleeping at the shelter every night or outside saying that they were not, they didn't feel like the intended audience for that. They always, I heard a number of times that, they were managing and there's people who need it more than them, and that people didn't and then they weren't going to seek assistance because they felt that others needed it more. And I think, as I said earlier, I think a lot of that has to do with just the adaptability of people. When people get accustomed to a situation, it can be tough to change that. You know, some of it might be the Montana rugged individualism. You know, people from this state are very proud of their ability to manage, to make do, to survive. And I got the sense that a lot of these people felt resilient and that they didn't need or want anybody's help.
All right, Adrian. Well, I appreciate you chatting with me about this story. You can read Adrian's story on thedailyinterlake.com. Adrian, what do you cover for us?
I cover all things Kalispell, business, transportation, housing.
Awesome. All right. Well, look out for more of Adrian's great reporting. And yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thanks.